Welcome back, everybody, to Neutrality Studies. Today with Dr. Rolando Dromundo, a political analyst and journalist, and the author of the book State Building in the Middle of Geopolitical Struggle: The Case of Ukraine, Moldova, and Pridnestrovia. Today, we want to discuss the politics of the ongoing FIFA World Cup. So, Rolando, welcome.
Hello, Pascal. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Thank you very much for reaching out and for actually pitching the idea of doing a talk about FIFA and the World Cup, because the politics behind this is often kind of camouflaged. We are led to believe that this is a sporting event only, but as we've seen in the very way that Donald Trump handled even just the Iran team, it is anything but that. So, Rolando, can you maybe tell us first and foremost, what is your analysis of the politics behind the World Cup?
Of course, Pascal. Well, first of all, it's a very atypical World Cup. It is the first that it has 48 teams. So the FIFA decided to enlarge the already big cup that had 32 participants. Now it has 48, which of course increases everything, no, the requirements for organizing the stadiums and everything. But it's also atypical in the case that you have, for instance, that at the beginning of the World Cup you had one country in war against other of the participants, for example. No, so it's like besides that, you have a president of the United States that has been diminishing and harassing and attacking its neighbors, pretending, playing with the idea of Canada as a 51st state, until some weeks before, they were speculating with the idea of military strikes against Mexico. They have been obviously a very aggressive speech all the time against Mexicans about the threat that represents migration. So all this together, plus of course the already very publicized the migration policy of the United States that has caused a lot of controversies around the world, it makes it a very atypical World Cup because besides that, we have also a U.S. president that received something created expressed for this event that was the FIFA Peace Prize. I mean, so only like it was like the way of the FIFA of compensating the fact that Donald Trump really expected. I mean, the idea that he was going to win somehow the Nobel Peace Prize, and once this was not true, and even if he had Corina Machado go to the White House and gave her the actual prize and everything, but the FIFA was in the need to appease Donald Trump and give him create this absurd idea of a FIFA Peace Prize, no? And you have all this ceremony and Donald Trump smiling like a child, like pretending, oh yeah, I'm a hero, and he already all the time changes the number of wars he considers he has ended. But altogether, this is part of the political context that surrounds the World Cup. Of course, it's like and that's why it's very interesting because you have the FIFA that, of course, by one side pretends like to say this is a political event. We have nothing to do. That there should be no political demonstrations. But on the other side, they are completely englobed and completely submerged in the logic of giving Donald Trump whatever they want. And I think that one of the facts that Infantino and Donald Trump agreed in a lot of things is because they have this a way of doing business in which they don't care whatever the context is, while it's only maximize profit at all levels. And no matter what people say, no matter what the ethical standards may be, no matter what happened. Also, that's why I think there was a great understanding in that sense. We've seen a lot of issues about the ticket prices, for example. I was just comparing. I had the opportunity to attend to the 2006 World Cup in Germany. I paid for a ticket 70 euros that time, 70 euros in 2006 for a second round ticket. That it was an excellent match in the finals in Leipzig. So compared to that, you see now that you have prices for the final that range until $11,000. It's completely absurd. So altogether, yes, there are many facts from which we could approach this one by one, all the political issues related to the World Cup. You know?
Yeah, so what is your take? I mean, 48 countries is huge, and these sporting events, they've always had political connections. I mean, The Olympic Games, they always have a geopolitical dimension, and even in the ancient past, the ancient Olympic Games had geopolitical connections. I mean, there were famously the moments when even warring parties would have a ceasefire in order to go to the games and then compete and go back, right? At least that was the ideal under which they were done. And we see very similar problems today, right? That again, as you pointed out, Iran at war with the United States, and then going there, the US actually refusing to host the team, to let it actually sleep and dine on its territory. They having to go to Mexico. First of all, do you think that this is tenable for the FIFA and for the Olympics and large sporting events to select one of the great powers going forward? And what do you think it is that we are learning from the current FIFA, the way the FIFA is dealing with this on when it comes to these large international events?
Well, for large international events have always throughout history, and not only football, have used the United States as a super showcase. It's like like the biggest market, the biggest possibility. I mean, if we check the history, for example, of the Olympic Games, the Olympic Games really changed completely in the way they were being organized after Los Angeles '84. That was like a moment that completely shifted the conception of like what could mean for business, for the corporations, for all the sponsors to organize this game. So that's why the FIFA was perfectly aware, and they know the risk, but they were considering that the profit would be a lot more, even though FIFA's image had been damaged a lot, because it's not only the ticketing issues and the prices and the abuses that are a lot, but it's also the fact that sometimes the public money spent it's a huge inversion for other countries. No, so you compare in Canada, only two cities accepted because Montreal didn't want to invest the huge amount of money required by FIFA. You have FIFA that they force cities to engage in these contracts in which they have like tax exemptions, a lot of favors, a lot of clauses regarding the law have to be adapted to FIFA pleasure. No, so you have this institution like FIFA that arrives and makes political agreements without being a political entity or being like a state. Let's say it plays politics, but outside what is the role of the states.
Hey, just a very quick note. The best way to support this channel is by signing up for my free Substack. You can also help with a paid subscription there, or you can get some of our new merch on neutralitystudies.com. Links below. See you there.
So the big contradiction of sports right now is like you have the huge sports organizations that they pretend to be a political, but they need and they live and they depend mostly on the public spending that is done by the states to organize these events. Because of course, FIFA wants to determine the rules. FIFA wants to not allow never under any case that any local government interferes in football, because that would be like no chaos. Each time in history we can see that a country has tried to somehow intervene in sport, immediately FIFA doesn't allow it. But when you have to organize the event, please pay me, no? So so they force the states to invest these huge sums of money for the event that obviously for many countries it's not so easy, no? And that's why the fact of organizing in the United States allow this possibility that they always have the money, they always have the resources, they always have the possibility. They can allow themselves to have this huge of this amount of games and sell all the tickets and an average of more than $1,000 per ticket, and somebody will buy them because it's something you can allow yourself as organizing to committed to do it in the United States, and that's why it's so profitable and so attracting for them to do it, and without already considering the sports part of the organizing that events. Like, what is your history in this sport? You know, for example, what have you done? What are the results? Are you really concerned? Morocco had been trying for years, and with a lot better results, sport results in football, to be a host of the World Cup, but they have never ever been allowed for that because obviously it's different, no, and also the political push, and not to say the showcase that it represents. I mean, at the end, Donald Trump, that likes to be the center of attention, he will have a FIFA World Cup and he will have the Olympic Games if he still in the presidency in 2028. Also, that's why and the big this is like the main issue, but the main contradiction also at the FIFA, the way, and not only FIFA, the way international sports stands today, they have absolutely no accountability. They have no way of giving any possibility of clarifying or showing any kind of transparency how they deal with sponsors, how they deal to really the real negotiation of how they give the candidacy to any country. At the end, there's and that's why we have been picturing a lot of scandals of corruption in international sport. We remember what happened with Joseph Blatter and Joao Belange years ago, but that won't be the last. But because there is absolutely no intention of modifying the structures of accountability of how FIFA is played, and how there is absolutely no possibility today that states or international organizations may somehow interfere or regulate or control or limit the power FIFA has now, and especially against small countries, no? Because if they, with the United States, they can find an agreement. Imagine when they had to organize events in South Africa, in Brazil, even with Mexico. The capacity of resistance is a lot less for local governments than it could be for with a major power. No, so that's why, and also this idea of creating this three host event to sell the idea that is more multinational and multicultural, but it's half a fake because the United States has more than 80% of the games. They have all the quarterfinals, all the semifinals. They have the final. They have mostly everything. So you have only two countries added just to say, yeah, it's FIFA United, football unites. No, but that's a fake because football unites, but of course Mexican fans cannot go freely to the United States because, like, I mean, 80% of the Mexican population does not have a US visa, and also it's part of the contradictions continuously visible in international sports nowadays. No?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy involved in all of this. I mean, one part then is of course also this issue of who gets to participate and who doesn't. And actually, I, I must apologize. I don't know what about Russia. They are not allowed to participate, right? Or under a neutral flag. Or can you update me on that one?
Well, this is very interesting because after 4 days, no, in 2022, that the Russia attacked the invaded Ukraine. After 4 days, UEFA and FIFA were already banning and applying sanctions on Russia. But what about Israel? There's absolutely no sanctions, no intention, no suggestion of considering any sanctions against Israel. So there's a completely double standard on how the law applies in that sense. Yes, let's not forget. I mean, most of the European sports organizations are extremely Eurocentric, but also they have followed whatever the Western standards on how sanctions have been applied. If we see the historical way in which sanctions have played, they have completely different. Always years ago when the Soviet Union was a big power, there was no possibility by the institutions to apply sanctions directly to the Soviet Union. Now the context has changed. Russia is completely out of possibility of participating in UEFA competitions or in FIFA competitions, but instead, what as I mean is a completely double standard. So what is the criteria? They invaded a country, okay, but what happened with Israel, for example? There's nothing in that case. And what happened with the United States? They attacked Iran, and who sanctions the United States? Of course, nobody would dare to propose or to mention the idea of sanctioning the United States. It's a complete double standard that only showcase how the relations, the power relations in the world are established right now, and and the fact is that in that sense, it's extremely Eurocentric and Western oriented. All the people that are heading the sports organizations around the world, it's not. I mean, all of them are based in Switzerland, mostly in Lausanne, except FIFA that is in Zurich. But the fact is that there is a clear double standard that doesn't have specific criteria, and it's not only for sanctions because I mean it's only also for recognition because the fact of recognizing a state, you have 193 states in the United Nations plus observers plus two observers. Instead, you have in FIFA more than 200 members. No, You have Scotland, that is not an independent country as member of FIFA, but you don't have a Catalonia, for example, that Catalonia and Scotland have a very similar context in which you have people with a big push to trying to obtain independence and in a very similar context, but they are not allowed in that sense. I mean, for example, you can see that a lot of territories that belong to the United Kingdom are allowed to have a separate delegation for FIFA. We have, for example, Curacao, that it's not an independent country, but it's participating in the World Cup. Curacao belongs to the Kingdom of the Netherlands, for example. No, so in some cases you may, in some cases you don't. You have Kosovo as member of FIFA, but you don't have Ossetia, for example, South Ossetia, or you don't have Abkhazia, for example, that are countries also in a similar condition that can be considered. No, like if we compare. So altogether, FIFA plays with that, but they don't have a fixed criteria. It's not like, okay, in this case, let's sanction everybody that makes a war, attacks a country without the approval of the United Nations. That's not the case. Let's recognize only countries that belong to the United Nations or plus observers. That's not the case. At the end, there are many irregularities on how they operate, but obviously it's clearly visible the impact of the geopolitical context, the impact of what the dominant view prevails from a Western perspective, and that's how FIFA operates, together with maximizing the opportunity of doing business and especially allowing sponsors to control and determine whatever is happening. Because we have, at the end, it's in the interest of sponsors, it's in the interest of all the corporations that regulate and control and push for changes of rules. I mean, the rotation break, for example, is like that has created a lot of critics around the world, because it's only a way of giving sponsors 2 more minutes during the first time, 2 more minutes during the second half, and altogether, it's like the sponsors rule, and the rest. I mean, like it doesn't matter. Football, it's not the priority,
Oh,
unfortunately.
but it's a fascinating case actually, because it's in a very pure sense a power game, right? FIFA is all about negotiation and who can do what and who can put what kind of pressure on the other in order to get something out of it. So it's actually a very good representation of the anarchic world in geopolitics, in realism, but also a representation of how there's a shared interest of organizing something, right? Everybody still wins if you manage to organize this kind of thing. Um, and FIFA, I mean, the word FIFA itself is an abbreviation of the French title of the organization, Fédération Internationale de Football Association, so International Federation of Football Associations, right? Um, and they are constituted as an association in Switzerland, which is a legal structure. And as such, they're just a private corporation, just a private entity that then, together with other private entities around the world, each country has their own, or each jurisdiction has its own kind of football association. And they then join FIFA in order to say, like, hey guys, we want to participate in your game. So it's actually all privately structured. However, as you said, there are reasons the why FIFA wouldn't accept the football association of the Basque country or of Catalonia to actually participate in their club. Do we know how big the structural role of governments actually is? Because governments do have an interest of having certain things represented on the international stage and others not. So is some of these things due to political pressures, or is most of it actually coming from private interests of these various groups around the globe?
There's also political pressure at the end when negotiating. I mean, like there's always a way of who wants what. I mean, who wants to organize the World Cup? It's been throughout history of FIFA, even though the ways in which it has been done has changed. But FIFA has always been very close. I mean, let's not forget the second World Cup was organized in Italy in 1934 during Benito Mussolini's government. Oh, and it was like for him, it was the ideal showcase in which Italy won the World Cup and wanted to prove to the world how Italy was a great country, etc. And also, it like, and the FIFA knows that. I mean, it's like they don't mention it openly, but it was very clear how it was like if somebody wants to use the the concept sports washing, I mean that's like it's already can be found from that point, no, and it was not the first time. So it was there were many cases in which it has been completely linked. 1978, let's not forget, there was a harsh, one of the most cruel military dictatorships in Latin America and Argentina, and they organized the World Cup in 1978. They even had they received help during a match that would assure them the pass to the finals. And there were a lot of controversies because there were a lot of people disappear. It was a dictatorship that had more than 30,000 people disappear, plus people killed, plus I mean tortures and one huge list of abuses that now we're not finished done yet to finding all the horrors of what happened in that moment. And FIFA simply they closed their eyes of what was happening in that moment. Also, that's some of the examples we can go throughout FIFA history and find a lot. But the fact is that governments, of course, they know, of course, they play with the idea. Some of them very openly. Qatar, for example, Qatar or Saudi Arabia are two countries that were first Qatar, because Qatar is a very interesting example because they have been engaging in an active public relations campaign around the world, mostly in Europe, but all in many different countries. And one of the ways they use it is through sports diplomacy, because they said, okay, there you have Qatar Airways as a sponsor of many activities in Europe, football or others. They're buying stadiums, they're buying teams. They are saying, okay, they actively want to change the idea of the mood of how people perceive these Arab monarchies. No, so that's why they organized, and the way they organized the last World Cup. I mean, FIFA had for the first time in history they had to change the the date, not to be held in summer as it is usually in the summer in the northern hemisphere, but it was during the winter. I mean, it's like it was very funny for all of us in December with the snow outside watching the World Cup. It was like, well, this is not common, no? But it was all because obviously the way in which they managed to bribe, because there's no other way to tell it, to bribe all the FIFA leaders to convince them that Qatar was the ideal country. And also because Qatar didn't mind spending that huge amount to build new stadiums, to build all the infrastructure needed, and to like at the end, it's a first world country that obviously there were like a lot of abuses regarding all the workers that participated in it, but FIFA can close their eyes about that. So Qatar was an example, and we have a second example because after Qatar had a lot of success with and is still continuing having success, how they're portraying their image through sports. Saudi Arabia started to do the same thing. So Saudi Arabia is doing a lot of also sports investing. Let's not forget Saudi Arabia will be the sole host of the 2034 FIFA World Cup. No, so obviously they want to emulate or even do better in all regard, because if it will be a World Cup of 48 or even 64 countries, we don't know what FIFA will decide at that moment. The fact is that Saudi Arabia, they have the money, they have the resources, and especially they have the capacity of a government that will have everything under control. No, everything, no protest, no possibility of political opposition criticizing or saying I don't like this. This is not the best idea. This is like a lot of spending. So, so that's why governments, of course, they know that they actively engage in that kind of negotiations. There was a famous say, I mean, in the International Olympic Committee, I think in the 70s, when they were asking back then who was it was, oh yeah, I forgot his name, but the president of the IOC in the 70s, I forgot his name, but but well, let's the fact is that in once in a comment he mentioned that he preferred to, because he was organizing he had to organize the the Olympic Games for 1980 with Moscow, and he was very happy to the easy way. He said, I prefer to organize events in games in countries in which there's no opposition or democracy criticizing us, because there's like, it's so more practical. I don't remember the exact quote, but you can, but it was something like that in the sense that it made it easier, no? So like no so Samaranch, of course, that he was Catalan, and yeah, so of course Samaranch. So the fact is that altogether for the FIFA, these are perfect scenarios. Countries that are willing to do a huge public spending, without a doubt. Of course, FIFA doesn't mind of the political benefit they mind, but if they are spending and they are giving them whatever needs, for them it's okay. So, and that's the fact is that at the end, public money being spent on a big event, but in few cases, that will become something that is like will give something tangible for the people, no? Because at the end, mega events sometimes there's a lot of public spending that are not really the locals are not benefit with that. They don't receive the benefit, and it goes all the money to the corporations or to the organizer.
It's it's quite fascinating though that again in a way FIFA and the Olympic Games as well, they represent basically the collective West, right? Or the system of the collective West. And we see it now. I mean, as you already explained, right? Russia was banned from FIFA, but neither was the United States nor is Israel. So you kind of have this consensus of a group of countries that used to be able to tell everybody how things run. And we see that other countries actually do want to participate out of their own will. I mean, other people like enjoy football, therefore they also want to have their own football teams, and they want to send them to this biggest global event, right? So there is a shared interest, but that the power structures, the way that this organization was formed and the way that it is governed, is still very much operating under and within the collective West as a framework. Do you think that what's now happening is going to change that in any way, shape, or form? Or is this so entrenched that we should not expect uh, a rethinking also of FIFA? Because, the United Nations is blocked for different reasons internally from changing. How about FIFA? Do you see that change in this organization happened more than within in the UN or not?
Well, I think if there's a change, it will not come from FIFA. No, because at the end, what do we have in FIFA? FIFA is an organization that it depends on the local federations of each member. No, and they're completely interacting. I mean, the fact that FIFA has so many members is a way of the leading group by Infantino, the others, to assure loyalties with the smallest ones. You have I don't 213, I think is the current number.
They have
But the fact that
230 members, but only 48 can go to the World Cup actually.
but they all vote when when you have to decide when a lot of things they vote among them. So obviously all the small federations they are like easy buyable. It's like you can their loyalty is very easy to buy because at the end it is not for a small amount of resources. It's they are easier to compete. I think if there is a change, it has to come. I mean, again, from the states. No, and there are two things that I would underline in this sense. One, this has been noticed for many years. During the 70s, there was a proposal in that time by the Cuban government that Fidel Castro proposed that the Olympics should be handled by UNESCO. No, and she said because it's like it shouldn't be like a private entity. It should be the UNESCO to determine, to organize, and to allow themselves like to select the host and everything. So, and he started to campaign for that, and there was certain political pressure. He grouped some countries. There was numerous groups of countries that are already supporting the idea of pushing the Olympic Games to move from the IOC to UNESCO. The fact is that at that moment, at the same moment, the Soviet Union was also trying to be the host of the Olympic Games. So obviously, they had to put their hand on Cuba and said, "Hey, come on, hold on, this is not for you. This is not your moment." So and the Soviet Union stopped this Cuban campaign, and it was it. So I think at the end, if there should be a political will among states to reorganize that, to have like a different view of how world sports should be. I mean, and let's not forget. I mean, currently the U.S. is losing the hegemony they had for years. The United States is not the United States of the 1990s. in which they thought they had complete control of the world, and this fake Fukuyama of the end of history, in which the United States will be like the whole hegemonic power, that's gone. That doesn't exist anymore. It's like visible that the world is going to Asia. The center of the world is going around Asia. What kind of world order we'll have, we don't know yet, because we have issues to be solved in Iran and in Ukraine that will certainly have an impact of how this new world order goes. But that will, or could at least, allow a window of opportunity to say, hey, why not consider a different sport structure around the world? Why not give states a voice? It doesn't have to mean to be completely the opposite, or simply cancel the current structures, but at least give the state, that are the ones that pay, because at the end it's always public money that sustains these events. No, why don't have the states the voice and the opportunity to really limit and condition the way, and especially uh, don't allow the kind of abuses that are visible by FIFA in many levels. So I think that the window of opportunity is present, but you need some group of countries that are organized, that have the political will, and in this context, really, we're like have to see what kind of shape the world will have in the next 5 to 10 years, because really it's difficult to know. We don't know what will happen in Taiwan, if there will be a war in 5 to 10 years. We don't know how the Middle East crisis will finish. Europe is certainly trying to push a war against Russia, and so we don't know what could happen in many senses. But obviously, after that, that allows opportunities to restructure. I think that could create for sport a good opportunity, together with the fact that FIFA's image is deteriorating all the time. People already see them like a corrupt, abusive organization. It's like the way they handle workers, the way they handle they treat local authorities. All when you see all the contracts, all the tax exemptions. I mean, people at the end, they're not fools. Of course, people like football and people are passionate about football, but still, I think for fans, even for fans, they're not fans of FIFA. No, football fans are not fans of FIFA. No?
No, but again, the interesting thing is, while FIFA internally with its members has to function according to its charter, which does have some democratic kind of elements where the individual member associations get to vote. FIFA overall is not a democratic institution, right? It doesn't matter what the people of Ecuador and Colombia and of Spain and Italy or China think. The FIFA will act based upon the FIFA charter and whatnot, and then that will all include a lot of also money politics within the organization. But one of the risks FIFA runs is one that on a government level is a little bit lower within the UN, but it's still there. That's that its members suddenly say like, hey, you know what? Let's create another FIFA. Let's just get together. We all walk away, and then we create a new club. How big is that danger to FIFA? Are there talks? Are there people who say like, no, we are on the verge of actually walking and just going out? I mean, what is Russia doing at the moment? What is the Russian association of football association doing now?
I mean, Russia has football. They have a football league, and you have a lot of players that currently play in Russia that are participating in the World Cup with other national teams, for example. No, but the fact is, like, I mean, you cannot stop football. No, at the end, like, people play football, and people continue to be organized. There are always parallel organizations. Obviously, it's not sanctioned and not recognized by FIFA, which excludes, for example, as I was mentioning, there's one association called CONIFA that is, but they recover a lot of unrecognized states, but also a lot of different political movements or political ethnicities that want to have a special representation. So you have ethnicities from different regions, even from Canada or from Russia or from other countries, plus some unrecognized countries. You have Ossetia and Abkhazia also as members. So it's like a mix. No, it's like to say FIFA does not want us, so we are going to FIFA. No, so they like everyone that wants like to have a separate, because at the end, what's a federation is like it's a sum of federations. At the end, a federation is a group of people, no? So everybody, any football organization, any sum of football clubs can organize and say, hey, we have an organization, let's call it whatever, and we can add members, no, because that's what it is. So when it remains beyond the optic of what the states can control, there's always the possibility of that parallel universe. So I think the states have to acknowledge, and act together on what their real capabilities. Because yeah, it's like the FIFA has no. If you have a group of states, not only one or two, because like each time it has happened very often that some country wants to intervene a federation because they are not paying taxes, because of any kind of labor abuse, because of whatever reason, and FIFA immediately threatens sanctions or with the country, or with excluding the country of participating in the World Cup. So that's that. For example, Iran was speculating with the idea, justified, that not participating in the World Cup considering the current context, and FIFA immediately threatened with sanctions that if they would no, if that they could receive sanctions if they opted not to not participate in the World Cup, considering again.
Can you explain that to me? I completely missed that. So Iran said maybe we're not going to participate, and then FIFA said if you don't join, we will sanction you guys. Really?
It
I
was
think as in FIFA
speculated. Yeah,
sanction.
yes, exactly. And at the same time, you had Donald Trump that saying that he was not assuring the safety of the Iranian national team. So it's completely absurd. It's all about power. It's all about it's absolutely nonsense. The fact is that single countries have no. At the end, what happens is that you remain isolated. So you need more. You need a group of countries that said, okay, this is a lot. No, and that has to come from some of the at least some global powers at a certain level, though. So I think it's possible, but now I don't see now the political will. uh, I think it would be happen before, and at the Olympic level, for example, around the International Olympic Committee, before happening to football. Football is a lot more Eurocentric, even though they have in a big push, and that's one of the reasons to increase the amount of participants was to allow the market to grow in Asia and Africa. So to grow in Asia and Africa. So that's why they give a lot more assistance to these countries, and to increase the market to those regions. But nevertheless, still, football is a very, very Eurocentric
Yeah.
organization. We have a very interesting case in history, and that's one of the few cases in which FIFA, well, UEFA in that case, had to back down when the Bosman case in the 90s, I think, because in the Bosman case, you had the UEFA regulation, no, sorry, the European Union regulations for workers assure that all members of the European Union have the right to work and have residency in all the countries of the European Union. UEFA at that moment opposed that idea, saying that okay, like no, because we don't want a country to have all the players from another country that is not the same, and that would create a problem. So UEFA strongly opposed, and they finished in court. And after a long court process, the European Union won, and that was one of the few cases in which UEFA had to admit defeat and said, okay, now then they had to change the regulation, and then all the UEFA teams can have like a full squad of countries from other country that is not the host country, no, even, but they have to like a UEFA member. So it's like one of the few countries in cases in which we can see that, but there are very, very few, and obviously, but it's possible. I think it's possible for the states to organize. It's possible to have this talk at a level of the United Nations, at least at a level of regional organizations. They have the power to do that, because at the end, if FIFA, they are limited in the market. If Latin America would say that Latin America is a huge market for football consumption, of course they could have the capability of pressure in a different way. No, it is at the end now the countries are completely subdued, the completely forced. If you've seen the Mexican case, it was a lot more abusive with Canada and the United States. All the measures imposed by FIFA, but at the end, countries don't say anything. They prefer just to sacrifice that for the purpose of the political impact this may have. But I mean, and it's sad. But I think there is always a window of opportunity if there is a political will among certain global powers that want to think about, let's say, let's reorganize sports.
But why do you think it is that in these sports, and sports often are not organized under a national flag, right? Football is usually organized according to clubs. So just clubs getting together and then they play against each other. Why do you think it is that even though the clubs are the heart of the entire industry, there's still a need? People still want to see national competition. You still want the national team and you want the national representation on the world stage. I mean, this one is probably not going to go away, right? In a sense, it's kind of a mirror of the current world in which we naturally put ourselves into this country or that country, and we accept that this is kind of the highest level of international competition. Club competition is kind of below that, isn't it? Like in the popular mind.
Mostly it is, but the fact is, like, it's also a opportunity to escape from the daily reality for many people. No, it's like, you just to say, yesterday in Mexico, you had 800,000 people celebrating that we won the third game of the first round. I mean, I mean, we won nothing. I mean, it's like it's nothing. And so really, like 800,000 people on the streets. I mean, I would like to see those amount of people protesting for something. Like, so the capacity of football to concentrate that amount of people is unique. It's a huge, huge potential because that's also a market, and that's also a window of opportunities for political and economical use. And of course, many people in those cases, for them, football is like the way of escaping of all your daily reality. It's like, especially in undeveloped countries like in Latin America or in Africa, it gives you the lack of identity that you don't see in many daily issues. No, it's like, so that's why, in the I mean, the fanatics in, especially in Latin America, I think it's very interesting, but it's not unique. But I think it's a window of opportunity of for many things. People use football like, to say, let's keep them there watching football, like having them alienated. Why many other things happen. Also, for them, it's like the only possibility of having a moment of joy, no, among their daily struggles, no, and that's undeniable. That is a very important fact of football. We cannot forget that. Like, people need football like some sort of drug in which you to forget about what happens. And if in Mexico we see that if you go to Argentina, the level of alienation is even higher. I mean, it's like, but also there you have the clubs that are really clubs because they're related to the local identity. You have the club that is from your neighborhood, so it's like the local club, the sports club in which you grew, in which that you go with your neighbors to the stadium, and you are also partially owner, because there's a lot of another thing that there's no time to talk about it now, because usually most of the sports structure from a Eurocentric point of view was created around this figure of the sport club as an association of individuals in which you are partially owner, you have your shares, you vote for who will be the leader of your club, and you feel part of it because it's a club that in which you share any political ideology or religion or social class. It's a club of the workers, of the farmers, of the or the whatever, of the industry, but it gave you some sort of identity. This structure changed because it was mostly privatized, and they become the most of the clubs. I mean, became corporations, and they're not clubs anymore that they used to be. But still, the role of the identity was very important. That's why people feel identified with the clubs in some cases, but also with the national team. In and with the national team, I think the phenomenon is more visible in countries in which you have either a weak state, or you have a lot of inner political struggles to reaffirm or to maintain what is a state. For example, Bosnia. It's interesting because Bosnia, you have now Bosnia participating, but Bosnia is a failed state in many senses of the way, because you have I mean, Dayton agreements that don't work anymore. And you have a country divided in two, in which I'm sure it would be interesting to see the statistic, but most of the fanatics that from Bosnia are from the Bosnia-Herzegovina western part of the country, and not from the Republic Srpska that is like that they feel more Serbians. No, for example, that's like it will be interesting to see how they participate related with that. But it's like that gives you an idea of sometimes how they perceive a state, how they want to be linked with the national team. No, so I think each country gives you a different uh, a window of how they use it. But of course, it's a way of also escaping from reality. It's a way also of saying, okay, we are here. Also, we are there. We are at for one moment, for 1 month. It seems that everybody's equal. It seems, but it creates the fantasy of possibility. It creates a fantasy that a small island like Cabo Verde managed to get a draw against Spain. Nobody knew where Cabo Verde was some days ago, but after the draw against Spain and their goalkeeper Boizinha had an excellent game and containing all the attacks by Spanish uh, players, he became a hero. No, he became a national hero, but everybody was speaking about Cabo Verde. No, and the same happens with many small countries. So that's the magic also of sport, that create this window of opportunity in which for a moment you are not the tiny country that banned from the US by Donald Trump, but you're a country that also is playing international scene and is scoring goals or doing something and playing one by one against a global power. And that also and that magic of football, of course, is used also by FIFA. They understand perfectly that, no, and the role of what that the power it gives you to obviously play it for maximize profit and to increase the market and to maximize gains for them personally and for all the sponsors that surround them.
And at the end of the day, it's still an affirmation that people actually want to belong to certain nations, right? So it's a kind of an identity issue as well, and also the team players that find it. Often you hear that a lot of them say it's the one of the greatest joys to represent their countries. Even though, again, a lot of the FIFA members are not recognized countries, but you feel as part of a nation, right? So, in just in concluding, do you think that the multipolar world that we are going into will still lend itself to the same rules of the game? I mean, for organizing World Cups, or will it actually put pressure also on FIFA to say, like, yeah, guys, maybe we have to stop choosing great powers as locations to do this, and maybe we have to go to neutral places, right? We have to choose small states that lack this ability to enforce certain things. Like, I mean, the United States was just able to tell FIFA, look, we're not going to give any visas to the Iranians, and there's nothing you can do. And sure enough, FIFA must have hated it, but there was nothing they could do. If they did that with a smaller country, if they, let's say, chose Switzerland, or they chose Madagascar, or Tanzania, then they would have a much larger kind of way of trying to force an equal playing field for everybody, wouldn't they?
Of course, of course. I think, I mean, one of the ideas, for example, next World Cup in 2030, there will be six hosts already. Six hosts. So that creates allows FIFA to control easier all the six participating countries, no? Because it's like if one resists, they can always say the other four already agreed, so you cannot exclude yourself. And everybody wants a little bit of the share of what it means. No, everybody wants a little bit of the political opportunity to showcase we're doing something. The fact is that the more hosts you have, it diminishes also. I mean, the opportunity of having like one that uses this as a showcase for their own political game. So, but it's easier for FIFA to control. But instead, 2034, we will have Saudi Arabia, in which, like I mentioned, I mean, they don't have a problem with the money. They don't have a problem with the spending. There's no political risk of opposition until now, because I mean, we don't know what will happen in 8 years, but like
Yeah,
it doesn't
actually,
seem.
that's a problem, right? I mean, the certainty is kind of gone. The West Asia used to look much more stable than right now, but yeah, I mean, FIFA will just have to deal with it.
Exactly, exactly. We still we don't know what will happen, but I think I really think that what will happen is that the sports organizations, I mean FIFA, will have to adapt to the world order. They have always done that. I mean, let's not forget. I mean, they accepted the Nazi regime participating in 1938. No, for example, there was the Nazi flag in the Germany games in Switzerland in 1938, and it was like, okay, they didn't mind it at that moment. Also, they always adapt to, I mean, who is in power, who is in charge. Uh, so if the economy is moving to Asia, and if the main pole of the world is moving to Asia, it could be that in a certain moment we could find also. It's true that China has not tried deeply to play a more active role. I mean, they have been engaged, yes, in using sports for results to promote. I mean, to say like they really try and want to be the first in the Olympics in medals obtained. But I mean, still they are not engaging because they know it's still very Western oriented. All the structures, or structure, and mostly football. No? So we may see a change, but I think that will depend on how this new world order will see in until the things are settled in Iran, in Ukraine, and in the Pacific, in Pacific with China.
That is certainly the case, but I think you are right in also pointing out that FIFA and the Olympics too, like sports diplomacy and sports politics, is actually not a bad way of trying to get a feeling for where things are going. If FIFA changes stuff about its rules of engagement, then maybe if they start adding Russia again, and so on, that might be a strong indication for something. If they start kicking out members, that's an indication for something. So it's like, it could be a canary in the coal mine to look at. Uh,
Of course. I just go ahead.
no, please, your final thoughts on the topic, and then we'll finish off.
I think, I mean, football is it's very attracting, very appealing. It's magic to watch the games, and of course, for people fanatics and not fanatics, it's a month every 4 years that captures the attention of a lot of people. But it's we have always to not forget also that beside that, there's also a lot of politics going around. At the end, this is the politics and geopolitics around the World Cup are always present, uh, and and it's important to be aware of all the public spending that is considered, that is used. I mean, in South Africa, I think was the most extreme case in which the country really had to leave uh, many of the resources for the World Cup, and I think it's important to limit that. I mean, FIFA shouldn't have so much power. There shouldn't be the same way we shouldn't have a trillionaire in the world, the same way we shouldn't have an organization that has so much power, unregulated, and with without any accountability that FIFA. No, FIFA needs accountability. FIFA needs limits. FIFA needs the states to somehow engage more proactively in a way of setting the limits together through United Nations, through UNESCO, through all the regional uh, international organizations possible, to see, okay, until what point we are leaving a private entity to determine what happens within a state. No, one entity that is not regulated is trying to regulate what happens inside the state. So I think that's something that has to be considered, that has to be repeated, that has to be reminded for the good of football, no, for the good of football in general, and also for all the loyal fanatics that no matter what happens will be every 4 years sacrificing 1 month of their life to watch whatever games is possible and to try to follow whatever is happening and to be wearing their national T-shirt with all the passion and with all the symbolic meaning it has.
Listening to you, I feel like a very, very bad Swiss because I don't even know what they're doing. These football games are the last thing I will watch when there's nothing else on TV. But the politics of it is fascinating. So,
They're doing well. They're doing well.
well, I'm glad to hear that. Dear Rolando, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.